Welcome to the House Judiciary Committee this Friday, January 10th. And this morning we are going to continue our introductions. First, talk to the Legislative Council, and then we're going to be hearing from various frequent flyers in this committee later this morning and this afternoon. So, should I have you start and kind of introduce what you all do for us? I know that a lot of us have been here. We have 3 new members, so we're a lucky committee that has a lot of long-term experience. But you can remind all of us, really, at the beginning of the session of how we're supposed to actually work with you guys.
So, should we do introductions first?
Yes, let's do introductions. I'm alone.
Okay, well,
Judiciary and
no, but I think we introduce ourselves to the new folks, but
I want to introduce our new folks to you guys too.
Right. So Michelle Childs, and this is your judiciary team, and I think you guys have probably already learned, the way that our office is organized is we're subject matter, and so we tend to work in certain committees more regularly, but it's not that we're necessarily assigned to this committee. So you will see other attorneys in here. So if sometimes there'll be a committee of jurisdiction that has a bill and maybe they have you take an informal look at something without sending it to the committee. Sometimes, it'll come from another committee and you'll take a piece of it or whatever. So you'll see other attorneys, but mostly in general, you'll work with the 3 of us. So I am a little bit of a cheerleader for the office because I've been here a long time and I really love my job still. My first session here was 29 years ago as an intern at VLS. So I went to law school there. I'm originally from Atlanta, but I came up here for graduate school. And never thought in a million years I would ever stay. Like, it's cold, it's rural, I'm from a city, and I just fell in love with it. And so been here ever since. I was lucky enough to be part of the first wave of law clerks here. And back in the day, it was kind of like, I don't know, we didn't have HR, but whatever, it was kind of like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I'll take judiciary. And so I've been working with the judiciary committees ever since. And at the time, there was only one judiciary attorney. I was brought on as a law clerk, and then the person who I mentored under, who was wonderful, he was ready to retire. And so he retired. He retired the week that the Baker decision came out, which, if you remember, it was the decision that said that the marriage statutes were unconstitutional in terms of not being for everyone. And so it was only my second session that I was working with this committee to do civil unions. And Eric was one of my buddies from law school, and had done some clerking, and I'll let him introduce himself, but and was at a firm in Burlington. And I said, we need a second attorney, come on. And he came over. And so we have been partners working on judiciary matters ever since. And then Ben came on just a few years ago because Bryn, who is now our chief, used to be our 3rd member of judiciary. She went over to the Cannabis Control Board, and Ben came in, and then somehow Bryn wanted to come back and be our boss, and we were very thankful for her. So like I said, I'm from Atlanta. I've got 2 girls. I've got my older daughter is 17. She just started college in Colorado this year and loves it. She's like, Mom, it's kind of like Vermont, but with sun. Yeah, so she is loving it. I have a 15-year-old daughter who goes to Montpelier High School. I live in Berry City now, but I lived in Montpelier forever, and my kids, had gone to school there. So when I got divorced several years ago, they went to school here. We love the Montpelier schools, but I live in Berry City. I have a partner, Bert. He works at Northeastern Vermont Regional Hospital. He's a pain and palliative care doc over there. And we got a whole bunch of animals. And our offices for judiciary are in the Pink Lady. So
for yours, pardon? Your offices too?
Yeah. So some of even the people who have been here for a while. So we used to be on the mezzanine here in the State House. They wanted our space. And so they kicked us out. And so all of the attorneys now are actually in 2 Aiken, which is that building right over there, kind of, you can see right out that window, it's green and brown.
Yeah.
So all the lawyers are there, but they didn't have enough room for all of us. And so they asked Judiciary team if we would just be up in attic in the pink lady. Which is actually fine.
And Eric didn't have to move at all.
Right.
He's the only one in the whole office.
Right, Eric has been there since the very beginning, and actually, this office that I just moved into, I was in 10 years ago. So we have a little floor up there, so when you want to come see us, which I would say in general, for coming and talking to us, you know, you can always come by, but generally, just shoot us a little email or, you know, nobody really, do you use your phone?
I do, but I was the last person that paid to paycheck too.
Yeah, so, you know, you can always shoot us a little thing. I mean, you can walk over, but you may not find us, or we may be busy. And if you don't care about walking across the parking lot and up the stairs and then finding that you can't actually talk to us, that's fine. But you can usually just send us a little message and be like, hey, you got a few minutes? Can I pop by? So all three of us are over there. And in terms of talking to us or figuring out who to talk to, Nate has a list of, and I think for the new members, you got a list for like which attorneys cover which subjects, but Nate also has a list. So if,
It's in the directory.
and it's in the directory. So these are available and it's no big deal. You can always talk to any of us. And if we don't know anything about it, we will tell you and say, you really need to talk to Eric, or I'll pass a message along to Eric to reach out to you or something like that. It doesn't matter, but in general, if you want to talk substance, you want to talk to the person, like you don't want to talk to me about guardianship because I don't know anything about guardianship. You want to talk to Eric. You don't want to talk to Eric about family law. You want to talk to me, right? So, so we just kind of have divided it up to tackle it all. Judiciary has a really broad portfolio. We work on a lot of different things. So some of the things that I work on, I do all the family law. So I do all the divorce, I do child custody, I do maintenance, you know, parent-child contact, all of that sort of thing. I do domestic and sexual violence legislation. So anything in that realm. I do all the drug laws. So in terms of like illegal drugs and drug policy, but I also do all the cannabis law because it used to be illegal. I mean, it still is in many circumstances, but as it moved to decrim and then legalization and then tax and regulate, I've just kept that. So, but that's not actually in this committee. That's in the GovOps committee. What else do? I do abortion and reproductive health care, not so much around the stuff that you might imagine is in a health committee, but in terms of about, the legislature did a shield bill in 23, which was some large legislation looking at protecting legally protected healthcare from outside litigation in other states. So I do those types of issues.
Parentage.
Pardon?
Parentage.
Parentage, yeah, along with the family law, parentage, adoption. I think because of, you know, at the beginning, I did civil unions and I did the marriage equality law and stuff like that. So a lot of times I'll kind of be involved in some of the LGBTQ issues, even if they are outside of family law. So that's kind of generally what I work on. And I'll turn it over to you guys. You want to come up here or?
I'll sit behind you right that way. No one has to sort of turn around. I'm going to sit right behind people, but how does that work? Nice to see everybody. Eric Fitzpatrick, one of the also a member of our 3-person judiciary team. As Michelle said, we have a huge portfolio. So you'll see that I think having 3 attorneys is atypical for committees and legislature, but it's also totally necessary because it's a vast number of bills and type of topics that we work on. Quick bit of background. I am from Vermont, grew up in Virgins, in the house that my mom still lives in, although she's in Florida right now. Fortunately, got down safely for a couple of months. So I went to high school down there, then went to college in Massachusetts, traveled around for a couple of years and came back to Vermont for law school. One of those situations where you kind of travel for a few years and you're like, huh, actually the best place was where I started. So I wanted to come back here and in law school was very fortunate to meet Michelle because that's why we're both here now, as she alluded to. I did trial practice for a few years. Actually, before I did that, I clerked for a judge in Rutland for a year. Actually, the judge I clerked for was the former Speaker of the House, Franklin Billings. He was a federal judge in Rutland, and I was his last clerk before he retired. So did that for a year, then did trial practice in Burlington for about 4 or 5 years. And then fortuitously had a conversation with Michelle on the phone when she said they had an opening down here, and I had always been interested in policy. I'd always been kind of a policy wonk, and sort of adversarial nature of litigation of always, but it just sort of wasn't sitting right as well with my personality of more of a mediator, which is kind of, I think, more analogous to what we do. And so luckily ended up down here, and as she kind of implied, I think, other than Michael Chernick, our resolutions attorney, we are the attorneys who have been in this office the longest time. Am I right on that? Someone else? Right. So she was here a year before me, I think, 1 year, longer if you count the clerkship.
Yes, I had only been here like as full-time staff and no longer a law clerk for maybe 3 months. And we hired Eric, and then the Baker decision came out,
Right.
and all I did was Baker and Eric, after
Right.
being here for 2 months, his very first year, had to do everything else, every other bill.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And he's still here.
Right.
He didn't quit on us.
No.
It was great.
No, as like Michelle, I love this job. It's a great job. And if you think about it, you know, whatever the most current topical legal issues of the day are, at least in our case, as they relate to the judiciary committees, we get to work on. It's incredibly interesting, incredibly challenging. I feel like in terms of public service, we're doing an important job. I really appreciate that we're nonpartisan. Sure, you guys heard in orientation, and everybody else remembers it. Sometimes can be a little take some getting used to for legislators when they know that we work just as much on bills that are contrary to what we work on for you. But I think that's a really great thing about the General Assembly. It kind of keeps everybody cooperating, because at least on a practical level, everybody has to cooperate through us. I'm sure there are other ways too, but that's most important. But anyway, it's a great feature, I think, and that's part of the reason I'm still here. But also, it's working in a great office and being able to work with great people representing the community like you guys. So glad to be back here for another year. You know, you guys will enjoy it again too. Just on the subject matter issue, you know, for the last few years, things change. We've been here long enough to see how there are ups and downs and issues that are sort of the hot button issue of the day. As I'm sure everybody knows, for the last few years, firearms has been an issue that's taken up a lot of time. That happens to be an issue that I cover. So that's probably, if you picked out a single issue that's occupied the most of my time for the last few years, that would be the one. But in addition to that, I cover court procedure. So with a bit of a, as I said, trial experience background, it sort of made sense for me to segue into that a little bit. So things related to the courts, the judiciary, judicial nominating, judicial retention, the judicial rules that come out of the court. Also cover things that happen in the probate court. So it could be, as Michelle said, guardianship, wills, trusts, estates, that kind of thing. Property law also is something that that I cover, and competency proceedings related to the criminal justice context, mental health competency. There's probably others, but those are the ones that sort of leap to mind right away. I forget some.
Miscellaneous bill.
Oh, the miscellaneous bill. I forget. That's actually one of my favorites. Yes, every year there's many committees do it. You know, there's some topics that either may not be so complex that they warrant their own bill, or maybe it's a technical correction that, you know, I'll tell you right now, there'll be a few mistakes you'll hear me say that I made next year. We can usually fix those in the miscellaneous bill. And sometimes there are things that sort of get tagged on at the end. Many committees do it, but it turns out typically to be quite a lengthy bill covering a lot of different topics. So it's always fun and interesting, I sort of think, even though it tends to get a little crazy at the end of the session.
And just I would comment on the miscellaneous bill is that usually the only things that go in there are things that we unanimously support. You know, we really don't put anything controversial. As far as controversy in this committee, maybe there are sometimes things that become controversial outside, but yeah.
Very good point.
So you also do sort of mental health kind of.
Only as it relates to competency to stand trial and
Or
standing defense. that sort of stuff.
medication or,
Involuntary medication, no, typically that would be key. So we usually sort of.
okay, I was
So
just trying to
sometimes we're
remember.
the gray area to where the dividing line is, but yes,
Okay,
as it kind of relates to more Department of Health issues, tends to be key.
thank you.
And because judiciary is so broad and the courts touch many areas, right? Is other teams will consult with us about something. So if it might be like something that is really kind of strongly, clearly a healthcare bill, but it has some court process in it, then that team will reach out to Eric about that, right?
Environmental and Mike Brady.
Exactly. So, and they'll have us, they'll say, hey, can you take a look at this draft for us? Or am I wording this correctly? Or, you know, things like that. Or we might go in and give an assistant committee on something like that. So we all kind of work together, you know, when there's some blending of the issues. And then also, as Eric was just kind of thinking about, in terms of, even though we have our individual kind of areas of expertise, in many ways, we're generalists. So it's not like, so if you think about, and I don't know your exact practice areas, although I think you do some contract defense work.
Mostly criminal defense.
Criminal defense, okay. And so, in your practice, right, it's not like somebody would come to you and be like, okay, I want you to handle my divorce.
Yeah.
Right? So, but like with us, we cover a really broad, even just each one of us, even though we're kind of divided up. And so we're not going to have all the answers for things. So you might come to us and say, we're not understand this area of law, whatever. And so we're going to be able to kind of orient you, and our expertise will vary depending on issues. So like, so just through years and years and years of doing it here, I've kind of become an expert on sex crimes and sex offender laws and things like that, right? But it's really, it really varies our expertise on that. But we can help you find the person or people who are the experts. We can help you find the answers, wherever. So you may hear us say, well, I don't know about that, right? So we're going to give you the overview. We're going to point you in the right direction. We're going to help get the right witnesses for you, things like that. So we may not have all the answers, but we'll help you get them. Just wanted to be clear, to have a little caveat there that, because I think sometimes people think that if you're a lawyer, you know every law there is out there and how all the case law on it and all of that other kind of stuff. And I'd be like, no, let me ask somebody else. But it's one of the things that I think we really appreciate and about the job, Eric and I, having been here so long, is that we're still learning on this job, which is really pretty cool because there are a lot of boring law jobs out there, and we continue to learn, and that makes the work really rewarding.
Can I just add, I'm sorry, I forgot that I literally did not say the most important thing, which is that I live in South Burlington with my wife Carly and our daughter Abby, who is a senior at South Burlington High School.
No way.
What's that?
How did that happen?
So,
She was in elementary school when we started in this committee.
Oh, right. Can you believe it? And she's right. Look at it, colleges and all that sort of stuff. So it's hard to believe, but. And Charlie and I, although we didn't know we knew each other at small high school, actually both went to Virginia's high school, and her dad and my dad worked together at what at the time was Simmons Precision, Virginia. And, but we didn't actually get together until 20 years later. So time is everything, but that's the most important thing. And Abby is, like I said, a senior at SB, wants to go into nursing. So she's looked at a few different nursing programs. And yeah, like I said, should have led with that. Yeah, saved it for the end.
water bottle.
Oh, yeah, it's my water bottle, the Grateful Dead slash fan as well. So I think Barbara and I have that in common. Thought of you, Barbara, when they passed away this year, thought of you. But
Well, last but not least, my name's Ben Novogrodski. I am the newest member of the Judiciary team, so this will be my fourth session. And Eric and I actually had a very similar sort of trajectory of our career. So I was born in Florida, but grew up in Stowe since I was 7, graduated from Stowe High School, went back to Florida for college, kind of bumped around for a few years in between, ski bummed it for a year, worked in a middle school as a paraeducator for another year, landscaped for a year. Then I went to law school in Albany. And while I was in Albany, I worked for the Office of Legislative Counsel in the New York General Assembly. And so, like Eric, I've always had an interest in policy work and legislation. But then right out of school, I got a job working for a boutique litigation firm in Stowe, doing mostly plaintiff's work for about 5 years. And a little bit of criminal defense, mostly to help out my friends that got DUIs. I grew up with. I know. And then, so I worked there for 5 years, and then I switched to work for the state, and I was a prosecuting attorney at the Office of Professional Regulation for a couple of years, and then I came here. My portfolio itself is broad ranging, as Eric and Michelle have said, but I work primarily within restorative justice. There were a big bill on restorative justice last year, so those are things like diversion and programming with community justice centers, funding for all of those things, which is still an open question. But I also do law enforcement, but not on sort of the administration of law enforcement, really when it comes to like constitutional issues. So qualified immunity, interrogation, forfeiture. It's like
Sorry.
it's not a good word for me right now.
I'm sure.
I'm kidding. And then I also within my portfolio work on correctional policy issues. So you'll see me down the hall in house corrections institutions a lot, but there's a lot of intermingling between those areas. Another big issue last year was bail reform, which was passed. So all of you newbies that have questions about bail or are thinking about drafting requests, come talk to me first or talk to your colleagues and say, we've dealt with this. But I'm always happy to have a conversation. I also deal with child abuse and neglect issues. So you'll see me in human services as well. But again, there's a lot of crossover when it comes to sort of the administrative process when it comes to those abuse allegations and the court process in general. Trying to think what else.
Juvenile.
Oh, juvenile delinquency, yes, which you'll be getting a preview of next week. Eric is dealing with raise the age primarily within that, but the rest of it is within my portfolio. I actually did have one juvenile case when I was in private practice, so I'm definitely the person for the what else? Let's see.
I've done privacy bills for you, right? Like the license, well, maybe license plate reader is more because it's.
Yeah, so that was sort of, I took over that bill from Anthea last year.
And we're having more privacy requests around, the data privacy bill, but also just across the board on privacy stuff. And so it's starting to be a little more of the other committees around commerce.
Like body cam.
That would probably be, that would touch
Law enforcement.
with me, but it would also probably have other attorneys assigned to it as well, depending on the scope of the bill.
But on stuff like that, you can always, if you don't know who it is, just ask us. We figure it out. Sometimes we're not even sure ourselves because maybe it's just kind of, well, hey, does anybody know anything about that topic?
Right.
Or, did we work on it years ago? That kind of thing. So,
yeah, and another aspect of my portfolio is, DUI laws, which you'll be seeing some this year as well. As far as background, I grew up in Stowe, graduated there. I met my wife a few years ago. We have 4 kids. We have a blended family, so 2 from her prior marriage, 2 of our own. Our oldest is 11. Then 9, and then 3, and they're all girls. And then Jake, who is almost 2, is our boy and is the caboose. But she's a pediatric nurse. She works at Essex Pediatrics on their home health team. So she just works with moms and babies, and she loves it. And then we live in Richmond and enjoy Richmond. I don't know. I think what drew me to this job is what Eric said, is that sort of aspect of being at the forefront of all these impactful issues that affect everyday Vermonters and ourselves, and kind of doing the people's work with all of you. It's an honor and privilege to do, and something that I really enjoy, like Eric and Michelle. And I'm very fortunate to work with them, given their experience and and fun attitude. And, we deal with some pretty, heavy subjects sometimes. And so I always try to have a sense of humor. I kind of say my mantra is I take what I do seriously, but not myself too seriously. So I'll try to bring a flavor of that to committee when appropriate. And just to reiterate everything that Eric and Michelle said, anything that you all need, if we don't have the answer for you, we'll help you find it. So I'm excited to be working with you all again and for the first time.
All right, excellent. So most of us, but if we just have quick introductions of our three new members who we are happy to have on the committee.
Alicia, I represent Pittsford and Proctor. I was going real quick.
Oh, real quick. Okay, yes. I'm Ian Goodnow, and I represent beautiful downtown Brattleboro. Very briefly, I am an attorney, litigator, mostly do criminal defense. Although I did my first juvenile delinquency case over the summer, and whoever drafted the sort of like explain you manual, there's like a thing online where it's like, this is how you do a delinquency case.
That's not us.
Amazing. Okay. Whoever did it, you can give us credit. It was so good. I was like, oh, that's amazing. The winter time, because down in Brattleboro, everybody driving to Mount Snow, the DUI law is kind of like where I cut my teeth. So, I'm really excited. I can tell already that this is exactly where I want to be. So I'm really looking forward to working with you guys.
You're a lawyer. Where else would you be?
Yeah, exactly.
What are you talking about?
And he's sucking up already.
And I read for the law under Tom Costello. He was my mentor.
That's great.
I'm Zach Harvey. I represent Castleton. I was appointed by the governor earlier this week. So this is certainly a whirlwind adjustment, but going well. My background is actually in financial services. So I spent the last 10 years working in New York for companies like NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange. It ultimately ended up with the parent of the New York Stock Exchange called Intercontinental Exchange, which is a large financial service conglomerate based in Atlanta, Georgia. In that background, I work with private companies as they're getting ready to go public on the exchanges for the very first time, cultivating and building those relationships with a lot of companies from the Fortune 500, and then ultimately ended up in the executive offices of the NYSE and ICE, working for the vice chairman and president respectively, helping oversee global strategy for the businesses. I went to Providence College in Rhode Island with a degree in political science and economics. I've always been passionate about politics, but very excited to be part of this committee. And
Where are you from?
I'm originally from Castleton. Yeah,
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
Oh,
born and
okay.
raised in Castleton, so this is very much a homecoming.
Great.
So I'm really thrilled to be here and to learn, most importantly, from all of you and to work with you as we get this session underway.
Well, thank you very much for the introductions, and we're going to see a lot of all of you, but really starting next week, we're going to see a lot of Eric and Ben. That's great. So we'll move on. Does anybody need like a quick break? Are we all set to just keep on going? Ken? Good.
We took a break while I was talking.
All right. So Matt Valerio is not going to be able to join us this morning. He's currently ailing. So Tim, you folks have a little bit more time if you need it. So you can take some of Matt's time if you want. Thanks a lot, Eric and Ben.
I'm making a habit of it. And Kim, if you have someone coming up, that would be great. We team leaders do want the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs. And as of the clock strikes midnight tonight, I'll be the incoming executive director at the department. Thank you so much. And yeah, John Campbell has been in the department's executive director position since 2016. And I really feel like I cut my teeth in this committee with you all the last couple of years. So it's really, I have to thank you all because I think as a group and like as the two branches, I just think that we worked different opinions at different times, but it was just great to work with you all the last two sessions, and I'm looking forward to continuing the work. I wanted to make a couple introductions today, people that you'll be seeing in the building. My much improved replacement as a legislative attorney is Kim McManus. And she comes from us most recently from the Criminal Justice Council, 2 years, providing general counsel to both the Academy and the Criminal Justice Council. So she knows what it's like to work with 28 unwieldy council members, and luckily we have 28 elected officials in our department. So she is well trained. Before that, she at a law school worked as a public defender in New Hampshire. She worked with children in New Hampshire. She then took a small hiatus from the law, worked doing teaching. Decade or so, teaching, made her way to Vermont, eventually has been here, and then worked as a DV prosecutor in Addison County, worked closely with the SIU in Addison County. And it's just a host of experience, administrative law, appellate law, and practice in criminal law and juvenile law as well. So we're just so happy that we stole her away. Director Brickell at the Academy sent me a fairly threatening text when we hired her on because she was such a valuable asset to the council. But we have such a high respect for the work of the council of the last 2 years that Kim really helped to lead. So
Very quick,
yeah.
did you appear in front of this committee? I'm trying to remember. I thought. Yeah.
Last spring, for the ceiling bill for
Okay.
development with the council.
Okay,
And then, I feel like something else, but I'm not thinking of it right now, but something this.
Definitely, yeah.
okay, all right, yeah.
And also with us pursuant to Act 30 of 2023, Tracy Patno comes to us from the SIU in Lamoille County. She's our new director of sheriff operations. Yes,
For new folks,
Yes.
Special Investigations
yes,
Unit.
yes.
You may
Thank you,
know,
Angela.
But
Mhm.
I'll be the acronym checker.
Thank Special Investigations Unit, if you look in the county government section of our statutes, it's a really interesting structure where special investigation units were set up so that these agreements could be taken into place, and Tracy could give you the full explanation at some point to go investigate and provide services for certain types of crimes involving children and sex-related crimes in our communities. And so she has led that organization for the last several years. We also started a childcare center in Lamoille County. And when we were in the hiring process, Shap Smith, after the hire, was like, Tracy Patno is a great hire, and that's for his children. Childcare center work. So we're just so lucky to have them join the department. They joined last Monday. So we are hitting the ground running, and lots of introductions all the way around. Of course, the former transport deputy comes in late. Not sure he had a good hire. But yeah, just a brief overview of the department, and then I'll let Kim give a very brief overview of some of the priorities that we're looking to attend to this session.
But online or
What's that?
want to have it on?
You know what? I figured I dumped such a document load on your page today that I submitted some documents that are helpful if you want to explore them, and I will return to them
Okay,
at future points of testimony. But just briefly, yes.
I don't know for new members if you know that materials are on our committee page. Perfect.
Yeah. So I posted 3 documents. One is an overview that the chair had me do at the beginning of the last biennium, basically how a case makes its way through the criminal justice system. So it's kind of long, but it does help, yes. What's that?
It's sort of fitting that you.
Yes, exactly. It takes, and we'll get to that. And then I also posted our most recent data extraction for public viewing concerning the pressures that we're dealing with in the court system. Ian Sullivan, the state's attorney from Rutland, and I have been working on a data extraction project in partnership with the Judiciary's incredibly helpful staff, particularly Leda Molliffe and the general counsel for the Judiciary, in extracting data and then using it for understanding what's going on in our department in the 14 counties. So that is on your website. The big takeaways there is, as of our review of it, we're roughly staffing about 99% of the criminal cases in our court system and the juvenile court cases in our system. Last year at this time, there was 26,000 pending cases, including active and inactive cases, which can be quite fluid. Now there's 23,000. So we've moved about 3,000 cases through. And it's interesting how you split that up, active and inactive, and we can go over that at a different time. But there's a smaller group of active cases, which is really the focus of backlog. But in terms of the big picture cases that are technically in our system, 23,000 pending cases. Our department has 72 attorneys, including the 14 states attorneys. We have about 300 to 400 cases per attorney. And that's been fairly consistent the last couple of years. I'm looking at Representative Goodnow, who has seen the other side of that, I'm sure, as well. And that's something that's a real part of our life is the workload. Victim advocates, a part of our department as well, have about 600 cases per victim advocate. And that doesn't include the number of victims individually that they're working with, which could be one case could have several victims. Our department also works with the sheriffs. So beyond the state department works with the sheriffs, and they're in particular 24 transport deputies getting individuals to and from court. And we appreciate the service of former transport deputy Oliver, who spent his days in the vehicle and going to court and helping people out in that way. And it's really an unsung part of our criminal justice system, people that are detained who are presumed innocent, making sure that they get to court in a timely manner. Our department also, thank you, Angela, has the SIU grants program, and we distribute dollars for the SIU programs across the state. And that's something that we won't dwell too much on today unless we ever get into budget, and Annie can come in on that. But our central office, right? Most other states don't have what we have. We have a central office which serves states attorneys and sheriffs. So 28 elected officials, and we provide assistance to about 175 employees. Everything from IT, HR, policy development, legislative advocacy, budget management, and things like, how are we going to come to this agreement with Judiciary on this topic or with DCF on this topic? A lot of the bells and whistles are not out in front, and it's the gears behind that we're often working with. And it's a department that has some real pressures on it, and we have submitted some requests this year, which we'll get into with appropriations, which we briefed the chair on at one point. But in terms of some of the big picture pressures that we're facing beyond the cases at the highest level, we are dealing with 96 pending homicides that our department is staffing. Last year at this time, there was about 90 pending homicides. The last 3 years, there's been 20 homicide victims in each of the last 3 years. In 2022, 23, 24, 20 homicide victims. 2021, there was 11 homicide victims. So there's been, and we feel it. It's like when the data represents something and then we're feeling it in our department. That's something that I wanted to just highlight. There is crime data at the end of the presentation that you'll see for the 2024. Yep.
So did you say 90?
96 pending homicides now.
So that's homicide or attempted homicide.
Yes, it includes.
I want to make sure that.
It includes the way that we do that poll is mention of a couple key terms. It's actually fairly analog, but we do a couple key terms like manslaughter, murder, and it includes attempts.
Okay.
And when Representative Andriano was in here, we had a discussion about the difference between a completed and an attempted murder. Is the bullet, maybe it's not in the chamber, but that you shot at the individual. So it can be quite small details. And before we get into our legislative agenda with Kim, we are going to be putting in requests for new positions. One of the areas that we're really seeing a lot of pressure is things that are like sealing and expungements, right? We've had 70,000 orders for that over the last 5 years. That's a lot of work. And our admins, of which there are 31, are completely underwater right now with respect to that type of work. So we need additional administrative professionals and paralegals. We need additional victim advocates to deal with that 600 per victim advocate caseload. And we will be requesting a few additional deputy state's attorneys as well. But we really need to make sure we're supporting the other side of the house. We're the largest custodian of digital media in the state of Vermont, in part because of body cameras and our need to hold on to discovery information for defendants, for future appeals, for PCRs. PCRs are post-conviction relief cases, which we also staff in our department after someone has been convicted. Post-conviction relief matters for a detained and an incarcerated individual, and there's a statute that addresses that. So that's kind of the big picture for our department. Before I moved on to the agenda, any questions about some of the work we do? And yeah.
2 points, because I think you brought up how the Department of State Attorney and Sheriff is different from other states. And would you say it's because of the or missing a county government? Is that one of the big things?
Oh,
What is the difference of it?
Yeah.
I feel like there is a difference in Vermont. You can speak to
yeah.
that.
So
Let
there's.
me give my second.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Define them. It's just and I remember I was trying to learn this, how your office works with the Attorney General's office, because I feel like those kind of get confused sometimes.
it's great questions, and included in the exhaustive presentation from a couple of years ago, you'll see that there's this idea of, I'll take the second question first, concurrent jurisdiction. So any case, the Title III says that any case, a state's attorney may file, the Attorney General's office may do the same. So we have concurrent jurisdiction with the Attorney General's office. And they can speak to their own portfolio. As to the first question about what makes us different, I'm a part of an organization called the National Association of Resource Prosecutors, and it's basically central offices that serve county and district attorneys. Many other states have district attorneys. They could include multiple counties. And we are one that is a state that is county-based, so we don't have the districts. And other states have county states attorneys as well. But one of the major differences is funding streams. So we have a central office to assist with budgeting and paying for the services that we're providing in one location out to the field. Other states have county streams of tax revenues, county sources of funding, et cetera, that go directly to district attorneys and county states attorneys' offices. The other piece is that we are assisting states attorneys and sheriffs. I think we are unique in that we are a department in the executive branch that serves two different types of county-related activities, law enforcement at the front end and then at the prosecution end as well. Most other states will have like a separate entity for sheriffs and states attorneys. And it makes the work really interesting, complex, and we are, in part because of the work of Act 30 from 2023, we now have a full-time employee in our department that's assisting the sheriffs in the work they're doing. I was a deputy state's attorney prior to coming into the role at central office. And so I brought that experience with me. And we really try to work with, I won't say both sides, but both entities in the department to make sure that we're covering the full needs that we're seeing across the board for both sheriffs and state's attorneys. But yes, we are unique in that way. Most of the other partners that we work with in other states are, oh, you work with sheriffs as well, or you work with state's attorneys as well, because they're used to just dealing with one stream. So it does make us unique. Yeah. Any other questions on the operational side?
Go ahead.
Is your office responsible for do you hold all the discovery? Do you also produce it to each of the state's attorney's offices, when they have to?
Each of the county state's attorney's offices manages their own discovery.
Okay.
And in terms of the leadership, and I should have mentioned this at the front end, my position is voted on by the Executive Committee of Sheriffs and the Executive Committee of State's Attorneys. Those are in Title 24. And those are the two leadership structures that we have. There's 5 state's attorneys that are elected by their peers to serve as the Executive Committee of State's Attorneys, and likewise for the sheriffs. And those two kind of committees are overseeing the department. And the Executive Committee of State's Attorneys is chaired by Erica Marthage from Bennington County. And for the sheriffs, it's Mark Anderson of Windham County.
Who are the others on the executive committee for state's attorneys?
It's Ward Goodenough from Windsor County, Graham Kreinschfeld from Franklin County, Ian Sullivan from Rutland County, and Farzana from Orleans County as well. Yeah, there's 5. Any other questions on the operational side?
I think the attorney general question we need to.
Oh, in terms of, so concurrent jurisdiction just means that they can file anything that we may file. Sometimes we'll work with them on cases. And the Attorney General's office has some specialty areas that they work on, ICAC, in internet crimes against children. And they also do Medicaid fraud as 2 kind of specialty areas. But they can talk more about the scope of what they do. And at the county level, right, we are locally stationed. And so we are, from the data that we've produced and extracted over the last couple of years, staffing about 99% of the criminal cases in our system, and the vast majority of the juvenile matters as well. Although for the juvenile cases, for example, for a CHINS case, the children in need of care, supervision, there's different types of CHINS. We often have filed the CHINS case. And then if there is a termination of parental rights on the other end, the Attorney General's office works on those matters. So there's a little bit of that partnership that happens in those cases as well.
You may have said this. If you did, I missed it, so I apologize. But I think it's important for us as representatives to know that it's the department that determines resources for the county offices. So staffing, for instance.
Yes.
Which I think comes up for us, our county state's attorney's office might say, like, we really need 3 more of this and 2 more of that, and they don't get to determine that.
Right. So the executive committee of state's attorneys, when we get an allocation of resources from the legislature, that executive committee provides the recommendations for allocation. And if they made a request, for example, and they're on it, they would recuse themselves from that request. But yes, the executive committee of state's attorneys really directs central office, our central office, as to how to allocate those resources. And we have an executive process, not purely based on caseload, not purely based on other matters, that sort of take the whole picture of allocation, and that it's a limited pot of resources and staff.
Just to follow up on that, so when we get to the budgeting issue, we're probably going to want to dig into, have a better understanding than we have right now of how those resources are allocated, and may have at least opinions just to share. But we'd like to understand that the resources are meshing with the goals that we have as far as providing those resources. So just a heads up. For down the road.
Yeah, and Annie Noonan is our Director of Operations and Labor Relations, and she really directs our financial agenda and activities. And we'd be happy to come back in at some point to talk about those matters. Yeah.
Questions?
Great. So I think what I might do, if it's okay with you, is just introduce Kim to the seat here and to briefly go over some of our legislative priorities.
Absolutely. You're taking Matt Valeri.
Yes, exactly.
And this is very great, so we won't use all of Matt's time, I promise.
He's not coming in.
Oh, I know, we still won't use all of his time. You might actually get like a little break that you probably would like. So as Tim said, I'm taking over Tim's job, so I will be appearing in front of you fairly regularly. For those new to the committee and sort of thrown into the criminal justice world, we love our acronyms and our quick words that summarize these very complicated ideas and systems. So never hesitate to interrupt me. I try really hard not to just blast those through, but when we're deep in it, sometimes we just reflexively use them. So please do not hesitate to interrupt me and ask what in the world I just said. It sounds like you have a translator already on board, but I will not take any offense to that. We've submitted detailed documents to the chair of the committee about our priorities for this year, but I'm just going to highlight them for everyone.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Is it okay for me to have those posted? Because it was just sent to me. Do you have a problem with me posting that, or?
With some leaders posting the email?
Like the Word documents?
Yeah, the
Word documents.
that you.
The Word documents would be absolutely fine.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, for each of the,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you for asking. So you'll see those very soon. And again, we'll go through them as they come up in detail. But the 5 areas that we are focused on this year, the first one is sealing. The sealing bill that you all who have been on the committee know well. We would like to continue that work with you and continue moving the system to a sealing-based system rather than an expungement-based system for criminal records. So that's our first priority.
So, and I'm just interrupting.
Yeah.
A moment. So that's the last time we're going to hear sealing or in this committee unless it's attached to a bill from the Senate. Because we spent like weeks, it seems, last session on coming up with a bill that was a compromise bill out of this committee, and it was sent to Senate Judiciary where it died. And they're going to start with it, and I understand they're going to start with it. So just a warning that those are forbidden words unless they're attached to a Senate bill.
We will talk about those words later. Possibly, and we'll be excited to engage in that conversation.
It comes over. We really,
Okay.
I really.
We'll do our best.
There's some good stuff they can pull from.
Yeah.
Yes.
The second priority is we would like to work with you all on improving the definition for recidivism and repeat violent offender. And this is to capture better data for us all. For those not familiar with the word recidivism, it is the the tendency or rate of someone relapsing into criminal behavior after being sanctioned or undergoing some intervention for a previous crime. And in there, there's a lot of room there for what that definition would look like. Again, for us to be capturing what is happening with our repeat offenders in the community. Our third priority concerns firearms. We would like to look at the statute that prohibits certain persons from possessing a firearm. And we would like to advocate that persons who have been found incompetent for trial or found not guilty by reasons of insanity or certain persons involved in, we haven't quite narrowed this down, but in some way have an illegal drug use, preventing those persons from possessing firearms. And that's Title 13, Section 4017. We'd like to crack that open and look at that. And our suggestions align with federal law in this area. And we're suggesting that we should line up with the federal law there. Someone mentioned driving earlier. I think it was you, DUI area. Our fourth priority is within the motor vehicle statutes dealing with driving under the influence. And it's really cleaning up an intent that the legislature had, I believe, back in 2007. But there's a section within our penalties for driving under the influence when it causes death or serious bodily injury. There's a little quirk in there that if there are two persons in the car and one dies as a result of the crash and one is seriously injured, that the way the statute's written right now, it's a little confusing about whether you can charge and have the sentencing enhancement for both charges when the incident occurs, one incident. So we have some language to clarify if that scenario should occur, that a person can be held responsible for both injuries, both harms. The fifth area is raise the age. And I know we have a session next week where we will be diving deeply into this. So we will just say as a department that we are advocating that phase 2 be repealed until we get a handle on phase 1. And we think there are a number of issues within phase 1 that we really think we need to work on before we move on to phase 2.
I want to jump in on that real quick. So next Wednesday and Thursday, our focus is really going to be on education oversight and understanding the system of juvenile justice. As far as really digging into what do we do about raise the age, it's kind of it's setting the floor for that. Probably the following week, we will actually deal with the fact that April 1st is presumptive date for raise the age stage. So probably it's more on that latter week that we'll hear why you want to change things or what you want to change. Just to give you a heads up for what we're expecting next Wednesday and Thursday, and then the following week will be a little bit different.
And it's a complicated topic.
That's why we need.
It makes a ton of sense, yes, to lay the groundwork, make sure we're all working with the same knowledge.
Groundwork, have a few days to let that all soak in if there's things to read, and then take it up the following week to really dig into it, just for your heads up.
Thank you. We'll be ready. And lastly, this is not part of our submission of priorities, but we have heard from a number of stakeholders that there is an interest in reviewing bail and repeat offenders. And that was not listed in our priorities, but we are definitely interested and invested in that conversation and look forward to working with you all on that if that should come up.
So any questions on those? I mean, we're going to have lots of time with those, actually. A couple things. First of all, there is a bill drafting request in for the recidivism. There's a bill drafting request in for the DUI issues. When I get a draft from Legislative Council, I'll circulate to see if anybody else wants to jump on as a sponsor on those two bills. The driving one, Tom and I are already co-sponsors on it, but we'll welcome people if they want to get onto that bill. That's one thing. The other is a piece of information that, one of the things that I'm not sure if we're going to get to it first, the Senate's going to get to it first, but really looking at issues related to competency. And where individuals are found incompetent to stand trial. And one of the information requests that I'll throw out to you right now to start thinking about how to gather is I do want to, and I guess for the court as well, I do want to understand how many people are being found incompetent to stand trial. And I also would really like, because I hear a lot of anecdotes. And in particular, I'm very interested on those individuals who are repeat offenders, who have multiple dockets. And do we have, what level of an issue is it that individuals are committing nuisance crimes, or more than nuisance crime, but trespassing, retail theft, those kind of things, and are getting into the criminal justice system, found incompetent to stand trial. They may or may not get an ONH, an order of non-hospitalization to treat their underlying issue, but they end up cycling back in. And I just want to get a sense of how big of a part of the problem that is, because I think I'm very interested. I've had conversations with Bram, for instance, and Tim, to look into what to do in the situation with individuals who end up being found incompetent to stand trial. I know there's been a lot of work on competency restoration. I don't know if that's the route to go, because I know that people push back against that, but I really feel we're not serving many individuals in the community who are found incompetent to stand trial and don't get treatment, don't get the help afterwards, and cycle back in. So anyway, I just wanted to flag that, to ask you to kind of start looking for that kind of information. I actually do have a bill drafting request, but nothing attached to it because I don't know what to do about that topic. But I just wanted to flag that for you as well.
Thank you.
And one last thing for you all, and I guess this is all for Judge Zone and Terry Corsones as well, is tentatively we're looking at the 20th of January, 23rd, of January. It's a Thursday, joint hearing with the Senate to talk about public safety and disposition timing of cases, which includes concept of backlog and dealing with that. I just want to get that on your calendars. And I'm sure at that time, Kim will probably be digging more deeply into that information that you've already provided us as far as the workload and all those kind of things. So just want to flag it for you. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Yeah. Right. So, all right. So that should be it for now on that. I don't think we need a break because we're going to have lunch soon. So welcome, Judge Zone, and
Thank you.
Thank you.
Administrator. Thank you very much. Nice meeting you, and nice seeing you again, Kim. And thank you, Tim. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This work? See people are walking. I'm sure my spouse.
Watch after.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah, you can go on YouTube.
Yeah. Oh, I could just do it right now.
Yes.
Oh.
We already have these, but we brought.
Thank you.
Very good.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, it's been so much fun.
Is it a different constitution? Or is it? New stuff that we have?
It takes after the old.
Oh, this is the US. We haven't changed it. That one's really difficult to change, so.
Is this your phone? It was in there.
Oh, thank you, with the package.
Okay, we have two extra.
You get it. I'll try not to pick up his.
So good morning.
Gary.
So you can both, I like this kind of tag team thing. This is nice. All right.
I am Tom Zone. I have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Superior Judge. And this is Terry Corsones, and she is the Court Administrator. You will see a lot of us this year during the session. When the chair asked about coming in to do an introduction, I thought, well, okay, great. I've introduced myself. Have a great day. But the question is, well, why do we come in? what does the courts do? We all have an idea. But so far, you've heard from state's attorneys about areas that they want to talk about or concerns. And I would suspect that during your election cycle, you might have had citizens, constituents come up and have concerns too. Say, what about this case? Or I don't like this, or I like this, or can you look at this? Well, those are the types of issues that you're going to be addressing here in the committee. When the court comes in, there are areas that we certainly have priorities for, with judges, staffing, how we do things. But our role in testifying is not to tell you what policies to adopt. That's for you. But it rather to move and help you understand the impacts on the judiciary, impacts on existing legislation, to style language that will help you effectuate what you're trying to accomplish through the bill in a way that's going to minimize the issues in the future. And when I say issues in the future, one of the things that can come up is constitutional challenges or statutory challenges, or areas where someone would say, well, that's not really clear. What did the legislature mean? And so I try oftentimes to make sure that when I look at a bill, we're doing things to make sure that it's not going to be have people scratching their heads and go, what did they mean? And so as we do that, there may be times where you'll ask a question about, well, do you think this will work? Or do you think it's constitutional? I can't answer that. It's not appropriate for the court to give advisory opinions. We can, again, talk about impacts. We can talk about suggested language, but we can't talk about, well, if I was sitting on the bench, here's what I would rule. I can't do that. I've been asked, oh, do you have an opinion on whether this would meet constitutional muster? Sure. I just can't tell you. I, in advance, want for the new members, just want to let you know that please don't feel that, well, he just doesn't want to tell us the answer. There's things I can't really get into. If you do have concerns, and I think certain members of the committee have reached out at different times saying, I've had this constituent, or I heard about X, Y, or Z coming up. Can you look into it or tell me what's going on? Absolutely, let us know. We cannot intervene in specific cases, but we certainly can look at issues and try to identify if something did happen that is not something we want to happen, to not have it happen again.
I ask this, so you've often in the past issue spotted for us as far as saying there's a constitutional issue here without telling us, so that's always been very helpful. So then
Thank you. I try to, in those circumstances, say, well, I'm aware of challenges in other jurisdictions to kind of give you the hint that, well, where it is, you'll have the state's attorneys, you'll have the public defenders and other entities come in and they'll tell you what they think about the constitutionality. And we in the judiciary stay out of that until it comes into the courthouse.
Just make one other comment while we're on that, is that, and ultimately we listen to the legislative council as far as they will tell us, and often it is, they don't ultimately know, but we have good arguments one way or another, because we respect the fact that ultimately it's the courts that will decide. But we do take the counsel ultimately from our legislative council on how big of a risk we might be facing as far as something being constitutional or not. So, thank you. Absolutely. Oh, go ahead, Carol.
One thing, the piece that you said, just had real appreciation for your openness and transparency and kind of navigating like, oh, I'm hearing this and that. And I think that is one of the things that comes up is that we hear from all the different parts of the system and the different parts of government and hear these things. And often what I've found is that things are lost in translation, communication of it. And so it's about putting it back together, but we are only hearing one piece at a time. And so really appreciate you and the other stakeholders that come in to say, come to us, like, let's figure it out, because we're often hearing pieces of it. And we just need to connect the dots. So thank you.
And also in terms of court operations, Terry Corson, State Court Administrator, in terms of court operations and ramifications of the bill that's being proposed, that's another resource that we can offer in terms of, in the event that you implement this, say, for example, there were an expansion of the expungement categories. We could say that could, for example, require 5 additional judicial assistants to be able to handle the workload of the number of expungements that would be in this category, that kind of thing. Or in certain legislative council would have, their insights we could, from kind of a day-to-day operation, say, here's the number of these kinds of cases that we have scheduled currently. You know, to be able to provide that kind of information so we can have a clear picture of what the ramifications would be for different proposals. And I wanted to particularly welcome the three new members, and I have a Rutland connection. I'm in Rutland County, I live in Mendon.
Oh, perfect.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And I know I've seen you, I'm in the Mendon Planning Commission, so I know you're the Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so condolences, no.
Yeah, I know.
But the challenges for a small, you know, local community, so I applaud you for your service there
Thank you.
also. And otherwise, what I was going to do was just kind of give an overview of the court system, if that would be helpful, just to provide context, you know, in a broad way, and certainly if there's any questions. I did send Nate kind of a schematic that we have that's been posted that shows the structure of the judiciary, which basically the current structure is something that was implemented in 2010, thanks to a legislative initiative actually that had to do with the restructuring of the judiciary, first time in a couple of 100 years. Initially, Vermont was all county-based. There would normally be one county courthouse in each county that covered everything. And then over the decades, if you will, state courts were added to that county court system, including a district court that handled criminal matters. First was added in the 60s, and then in the 80s, a family state court was added, and then a statewide environmental division in the 90s. What happened in 2010 is there was unification, so that the state court system and the county court system were unified in one superior court. So there's considered one superior court that's statewide. And then roughly corresponding to the counties, there are 14 units, each unit being a county, and each unit having 4 divisions. And those divisions handle the type of categories of cases that you'll see. Civil cases, landlord-tenant, foreclosure, collection cases, personal injury contract, mostly money damage type cases. Criminal cases, felonies, misdemeanors for the most part, and I know probably the vast majority of the bills in your committee are criminal in nature, but you also get the other divisions as well. Family division, so that would be divorces. Parentage cases where people have children but they're not married, it's a parentage action. Child support, and the juvenile docket is part of the family division, as are relief from abuse proceedings. And then the probate division, estates, guardianships, adoptions, changes of name. So those are the 4 divisions that are in each county. In the larger counties, like in Rutland, you normally have 2 courthouses. The newer courthouse is typically what was the state courthouse, and criminal and family are housed there. And then the older courthouse would be typically civil and probate. In the smaller counties, you have 1 courthouse that handles all 4 divisions. So that's kind of the makeup. In addition to the county courts, there's also 2 statewide courts. I mentioned environmental division, which is enacted in the 90s, and there are 2 environmental judges who handle statewide any environmental cases. For example, appeals from local, whether it's the planning commission or DRB or whatever you might have there, as well as Act 250, anything involving land regulation. So that covers statewide, and then the other statewide court is the Judicial Bureau, primarily traffic tickets. So that's kind of the makeup. There's also a Supreme Court. We have one Rutland, the Supreme Court, that oversees any appeals coming up from trial courts. And then in terms of judges, in Vermont, as you are probably aware, the judges are appointed for the most part. The trial judges are all. And there's actually a very robust process involving the legislature. There's a judicial nominating board that when there's an opening on a judge, there's an application process, and the judicial nominating board includes legislators as well as representatives from the bar and from the public. The names are vetted and then sent to the governor. They select very qualified individuals from the applicants, sent to the governor, and then the governor has the discretion to appoint. They just recently appointed 4, which we were thrilled. We received 4 judicial positions last session from the legislature, for which we were extremely grateful. Those have been recently filled. So I think this is the first time in I don't know how long we are fully staffed on the bench in Vermont. We do have an upcoming retirement in March, but until then, we're fully staffed. And there's also, in addition to the application and nomination process, the legislature is involved with what's called retention. When somebody is appointed to the bench, either to the Supreme Court, and there are 5 justices there, or to the trial court bench, and there are 40 judges now there. There's also a retention process. You're appointed for a 6-year term, and then every 6 years, the legislature has a legislative retention committee. There's someone who's here. Basically surveys are sent to people who've appeared in front of that judge during that retention period. They can respond anonymously to the surveys. The retention committee takes all of that in, takes an additional, they ask questions of those seeking retention. And there's a full process where they're questioned, there are public hearing opportunities, and the committee then makes a recommendation to the full body, and ultimately there's the body will vote on whether to retain or not retain that judge for another 6-year term. So in my view, it's a very, it allows for accountability, it allows for input and oversight of the work performance of judges. I mentioned that mostly it's appointed judges. We still have probate judges who are elected and assistant judges who are elected. You might have encountered when you were in your campaigns. They're elected every 4 years on a countywide basis. And each county has a probate judge and 2 assistant judges. The assistant judges are lay people. All the other judges are required to have a law degree. The assistant judges have a limited role in civil and family dockets, and it's discretionary in terms of how much or how little they sit. They sit as fact finders only. So that's kind of a very broad overview of the structure of the courts and court operations. There are regional superior court clerks, 5 of them, that oversee that region. And then each courthouse has a court operations manager who oversees the day-to-day operations within that particular division. And then there are judicial assistants, formerly called docket clerks, who do all of the inputting work, the reporting work, the scheduling work, the case processing work. So that's kind of who comprises the judiciary from a court operations perspective. And as Judge Donnie said, any questions that you have along those lines, we do a legislators day in each county, and I think you were at the legislators day. I don't know that you guys were though.
You know I'm assuming this.
You would have.
Yeah.
Just sensory perception.
I left my crystal ball at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Every fall, we do invite legislators to come on a particular day at the courts to observe court hearings. They get all the calendars, they can watch whatever hearings they want. We have a lunch and they can ask questions of judges. But certainly, I mean, all of our hearings, but for adoption, but for juvenile, are public hearings. So if any of you would like on occasion to come and observe court hearings, we're more than happy to facilitate that. Also, one big thing to mention that's new, a couple of things that are new in the court system in the last several years, we went electronic in terms of electronic filing and electronic case management, which was a huge transition from the paper world. We're now all fully electronic. Aside from the big advantages where you're not carrying boxes of paper files, around, it also enables a lot better data because we can run reports, and I heard Representative Roland talking about wondering about competency. People found competent or not competent. And my assumption is we can run a report because there would be a code for that to be able to then provide the data that you all need in order to make good decisions.
If I could just jump in there to give a representative, we try to work with your questions. So the question was asked, while we were here, Terry and I have communicated with our chief of trial court operations about the question that Chair Lalonde had. And I just got a response. That's why I was looking at my phone. It says working on it. So there may be times where we're in a committee meeting. If you ask a question, don't hesitate to turn and say, hey, here's a question, because we can possibly get that answer for you in 5 or 10 minutes while we're still sitting here. So I apologize for interrupting, but I thought that was it just represents, we want to get you what you need to make the decisions that you have to make.
So that has been kind of a big advantage of electronic case management and files. The other thing that was a big thing was remote hearings. Before the pandemic, there might have been a landline phone on the bench, and that was our ability to have any kind of remote hearing like a phone conference. But because of the pandemic and the need to restrict the number of people in courtrooms and to enable people to participate in hearings when they couldn't physically be there because if they were COVID positive or whatever. We were able to implement remote hearing technology in all the courthouses such that now in every single courtroom, people can participate in video or audio in a much more efficient and accessible way. So it's been a big silver lining to the pandemic because we were able to use pandemic monies, first of all, to buy the equipment and install all that. But now people can participate remotely in certain types of hearings, thereby not having to travel, not having to take time off to work. People, for example, who might not be comfortable to be in the same courtroom with somebody else, if it's a victim situation, juvenile, they can participate remotely. So that's been another big change that resulted in lots of different rules and some statutes. So I make mention of that just for your awareness that is something new that we also involve the judiciary committees in large. So, but otherwise, again, whatever questions you have that we can help you do your jobs in terms of analyzing, evaluating, figuring out what the ramifications are, please consider us a resource. Or if you have constituents that have any kind of like court or law related questions, we're also happy to route you to whoever might be able to help that way as well.
So I had one question. How many judges are up for retention this next year?
Is it 7?
No, makes
I
sense.
think
Oh, no.
it's
Oh, no.
8 or 9.
Wow, okay. All right, thank you. Other questions?
It'll never be more than 13, right? We had 13 the
That
first
was
year.
a record.
There will be more,
Oh,
because the next time that group comes up,
with all 5.
there will be, I believe it's the 3 new judges were there. The 3 new positions were put in.
What would that be for 13?
Not the erect-
Yeah, there were new positions. I just did a chart for retention this weekend. And
Because it's the spot, not the judge.
that's
right?
correct. It's a spot. So we're doing this year. Even though it's each judicial position has a 6-year term, but if a judge retires in the middle of their term, the individual who is appointed to fill in that position does not get a full 6 years. They finish what the judge had.
Can't you fit those 3 new judges in somewhere different slots? We don't have 16?
That was the issue
What do you thought of that?
The issue that arose was because there were new slots, we couldn't put them in to start in 2025 because if they were appointed earlier, because it was funded back on July 1st of 2024, they would have had a term that's greater than 6 years, which would have been in excess of what's constitutionally permitted. So we had to put them in at a time that was going to not pass the 6. That's why they went into last year.
So is he 16?
No, because I think the 3 came into
20
last year.
So which was a light year.
Yeah.
Last year was
Yes.
light.
So there's 3 added to the late year. There would only be 1 added to the big year, I believe.
So, any other questions? And again, on the 23rd, we'll be digging more deeply into figures and numbers and such.
And we wanted to ask, I guess, in particular, was there a focus area? We're happy to do something similar like we did last year.
Yeah, I think the same kind of, we want to look at resource part of it as far as, we want to look at the stats as far as the clearance rate, the time to disposition, what we've done so far, how we've done so far, how we're doing, what else we need. And if there are other things outside of just the resources that would help the situation as well. And we may have, we probably will, I imagine people will raise the issue of more court time somehow, like night court, or I know that you've addressed that issue in the past, or whether the legislature should set priorities, which we've talked about before. These are things will probably revisit, again, after we've seen kind of where we are and what we still need to do to keep on working on it. So.
Okay. And I know the state's attorneys mentioned their priorities for the legislative session. Our ask primarily has to do with technology funding. And basically, right now, the primary funding source is the tech fund, it's called, which comes from fines and fees, which I know it's impacted other areas as well. That number has steadily gone down for a variety of reasons. While tech costs have gone up, electronic filing and remote hearings being part of the reason. So we're asking that the tech funding come from the general fund versus the tech fund, just because the tech fund at this point isn't sufficient to sustain it. So that's our focus for.
Is that gonna be in the BAA as well? The
Yes, we had.
Budget Adjustment Act for folks?
Yeah, because it wasn't last year's budget. We said it's not going to cover, so they suggested that we seek that in the Budget Adjustment Act, which we did.
Okay,
So that's part of that, but otherwise it's kind of ongoing.
right.
Um,
Which we have in so many other areas, and we're trying to move things more to the
and, uh,
general fund.
figure it out. But that, just so you know, that's what our request is budget wise.
Great, thank you. Not staff, you don't think? I mean, they're more.
What we're doing, Representative Milan, is looking to see the numbers that we received last year, again, for which we're incredibly grateful. See how that works out versus saying, yeah, we want more automatically in the hopes that we can, if we do need to ask for more, we have a basis to say, here's where we are, number of case filings, number of staff. Things are working, or if we're not requesting any additional positions this year for that reason. Same thing for court security. We received 11 additional court security officers, so we're seeing how that works out. If it's able to cover everything that needs to be covered in the line, and hopes that it will, but.
Just don't be too conservative as you have in the past in what we've asked for,
Well,
because.
We appreciate your support and encouragement to do that, and that's what we're trying to do.
For the new members, there have been times where I think it's fair to say, have been encouraged to ask for more. And our position has historically been, we're going to ask for what we really need. We don't feel that it's appropriate to come in and negotiate and say, well, we need 4, let's ask for 10. We ask for what we need. And
But to your point,
Although we feel that you need more sometimes, like
and
last.
dialogue has resulted in, the legislature says, well, we think you need more. We go, okay, you win. You're right.
I think we were right.
You were.
well,
Yeah, I just want to make,
the judge positions in particular
Absolutely.
dedicated to the treatment dockets, dedicated to the juvenile docket, it's already proven to be really beneficial.
Right, yeah. So, good. Pat ourselves on the back.
Well, and the one thing that I will say now, you'll hear this in the future, when we look at clearance rates and where things are. Yes, we got the new judges. You will not see anything that represents benefit from that yet. The new judges just got sworn in within the past week. They become operational, if you will, on February 11th is when the orientation is done. And so our hope is that March, April, you will see results. We did see that last year. 2 years ago, when we got the additional judge, and that judge was assigned to the Rutland area, we immediately saw results in increasing the clearance rates, lowering the case numbers, and it was a positive benefit to the Rutland. That was Rutland County, where we added an extra judge. And so our view is that will work. And the extra judges, as Terry just mentioned, we have a Chins judge. That is a place where it has made a difference so far. Treatment court judge, same thing. It has made a significant difference. And we are excited about having the 3 new judges who just started, because we think that's going to make a difference.
And certainly on the 23rd, if you can highlight that. And I also understand in the Northeast, extra resources there, they've actually seen positive results. I heard that from Judge Tebow when.
Once we get the other, we had, over the past several years, we added another position to the Northeast Kingdom, where there had previously been 3 judges between the 3 counties. We now have 4 judges. And so that has made a significant impact.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I have 2 questions sort of about the same thing, because I'm hearing, like, I know the city of Burlington and Winooski met with, the mayors met with their legislators and were very worried about like court backlog and trying to advocate for more resources for judges. So I don't know if you're able to accurately predict what the 4 new judges will end up doing.
Oh, absolutely. Again,
3 of them are going to vote.
yeah, you will
I
see
know,
a
yes, okay.
definite change in Burlington. Right now, for instance, we have 2 judges in the criminal division, and we have 2 judges in the family division. We have 1 judge in the civil division in Chittenden County. We also have up in Franklin County, one judge in the civil, one judge in the family, and one judge in the criminal, and the civil judge handles Grand Isle, all divisions. What's going to be happening as of February 11th is we will then have 3 judges in the criminal division, 3 judges in the family division, 1 judge full-time in the civil division, plus another judge who will be floating into the civil division to serve. It's going to be basically a flip, 2 days 1 week, 3 days the next. That judge is also going to be going up to Franklin County to assist in the family docket, which is in need of assistance. And so there will be, in our view, absolute benefits to the citizens of Chittenden County and Franklin County starting after February 11th.
So in the criminal judge, Judge Doherty, right?
Correct.
I mean, he has a
Right,
lot of
yeah.
experience, so he should be hitting the ground running somewhat. I know there's a big learning curve, but
Yeah.
Our goal also with our orientation, as well as when we start a judge, is to make sure that each judge can meet with success. So, for instance, in a criminal docket, if Judge Pack, the presiding judge who has significant experience, is handling 50 cases one day, we don't expect a brand new judge to handle 50. We want them to handle a number of cases that they're able to do and gain the confidence and skill to be able to handle more. So things will increase after the initial time.
So my second part of the question, which I'm like, I think you were in the room when Tim was talking about the number of cases that the state attorneys have.
Oh, yeah.
So in a way, they're going to have that number of cases until, I mean, giving them more resources, set aside, I mean, in some ways isn't going to help that until we have more judges up and running, right? Like, it's not like that will necessarily, I mean, it would go away in that each attorney would have fewer cases, but I'm wondering if us seeing the results of these judges coming online is going to be really important before we are really seeing the effect of case size, right?
well, for the state's attorney, yeah, I mean, it all
Yeah.
kind of, where is
Right.
it
There's another
called?
leg to the stool,
Yeah,
expense part.
yes, yeah,
Right,
Because if we add judges and we add prosecutors,
right,
we don't have defense attorneys to be able to participate. We don't have a case going forward.
absolutely.
but right now in Chittenden County, at least, the blockage is having one fewer criminal judge, when we're talking about the criminal docket.
And the goal will be to maximize trial days. And so it's not just adding to do status conferences and things like that. It's adding with the goal to, we want to add trial days. We want to bring the cases in because Representative Goodnow, I think I won't speak for you, but I think you may agree that what's the best way to have parties come to a resolution?
On pretrial dates or jury draws.
Exactly. And so that's what we recognize as necessary, and that's our goal, to increase that with the extra judge. Plus, we can also bring in additional resources. For instance, our treatment court judge, Judge Griffin, when he is not working treatment court, he has also been devoting time to Chittenden County, to the criminal docket, to helping out other counties. And so that too, we think will be something that will help us move the battle.
Okay, and we'll be digging into this even more on the 23rd.
Forward to it.
So I appreciate that. So we will be adjourned until 1 o'clock. We have some additional witnesses this afternoon, and so we'll go off live.
Nice to see you all.
Thank you for
Please.
So